Hello all you fine beautiful people, I'm back here once again with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about the album behind me, The Dark Side of the Moon. It turns 50 today, and I thought, you know what, I'd like to just come on here, talk about my experience with this album. This is the first Pink Floyd album, studio album, I ever listened to by Pink Floyd. It's it's the only one my dad owned. He had Echoes the Best of Pink Floyd, which was that great compilation done in the early 2000s, and I heard that and it made me a fan. But when I sat down and listened to The Dark Side of the Moon, I was absolutely mind blown at how well this album is and at how good it was. Especially in terms of production quality of this record. It's absolutely amazing to listen to. It's such a seamless transition from song to song to song, which is an absolute achievement in itself. The musicianship on this mixed with the lyrics, it's kind of sad looking at it now, and the squabbling that's kind of going on, the David Gilmour, Roger Waters kind of beef there. I know it reignited lately, and it's kind of very sad to sit back and see that a band that I absolutely love, and I kind of have been resigned to the fact, at least over, oh god, it's been over 10 years, that they're never getting back together. There's never going to be that big reunion. I've been a fan long enough, I got to see Live 8, so I'm at least like, okay, they got the send-off. They got that send-off, so I'm like, you know what? I can live with that. If that's the last time I've ever seen the four members together, I can live with that. Even now with the down to 3, I'm still fine with that. But The Dark Side of the Moon, it's perfect. And I was talking to Scott from the Prog Corner once, and I mentioned to him is that this album, to me, as a album, whether you want to classify Pink Floyd as progressive rock or not, I think they are. When people talk about the greatest prog rock albums of all time, usually it comes up with Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Thick as a Brick by Jethro Tull, Close to the Edge by Yes, and a few others. And I always find it interesting when people say that this album, if somebody puts it number 1, is a cop-out. I really don't think it is. I think this is the album that mainstreamed progressive rock and brought it to the masses, and is that landmark record that if you want to talk to somebody, what's the pinnacle of progressive rock? Dark Side of the Moon has to be in that equation. This album, and I know the band members have talked about this, and it's like, what can you say about Dark Side of the Moon that hasn't already been said? It's a fantastic record. This image right here is so iconic to like, you see this image everywhere. Like, Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon. I would dare say in rock history, one of the most iconic images. I really don't think it's very close. There's a few others that you can put up there. Abbey Road or Let It Be by the Beatles. Very much so, album cover. But when I'm sitting down listening to this, and I hear people talk about Dark Side of the Moon, I have to say one guy that deserves so much credit for this album as well. And I wonder if it would have been as good if it wouldn't have been produced by the absolute great Alan Parsons. I think he did a phenomenal job on this record. He even talked about it today, saying, I'm so glad they took some of my suggestions, whether it be the adding the effects of the chimes on time he talked about, and some of those effects. And back in the day, like, it's not like today where you could just grab a mouse and kind of insert it. that had to be painstakingly done by hand back then and spliced into the tape. And I have to say, for an album from 1973, you even throw it on today, it sounds so good that you can tell it was a production marvel. And how just amazing it's held up all these years, and how timeless it is. The whole concept of Dark Side of the Moon is being told pretty much through a guy's life. And all these little things about life, whether it be the money, time, us and them, kind of this brain damage eclipse, this kind of feeling as if you're going insane type feeling, on the run, breathe in the air, just speak to me as well, like the absolute mammoth epic known as The Great Gig in the Sky. Claire Torrey as well on that song with Richard Wright. Fantastic. Like, one of those songs that literally could, there's very few songs that I think I could listen to and it can actually make me want to cry, and that's one of them because it's just so beautiful. Looking back at this record, and like I said, the first time I heard it, I had not heard anything like this as a kid, and when I heard it, I'm like, wow. Like, I'd already heard Time before, Us and Them, Money, The Great Gig in the Sky, because I think those four were on that Echoes, the best Pink Floyd. Just epic. And then you have other really great tracks like Any Color You Like, which correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was done by David Gilmour using one of those Leslie speakers or cabinets. Like, I have a buddy who owns one of those, and they're a really interesting machine that I've seen kind of used. It gives it a whole different sound, but one of those great songs. Roger Waters, I think, does deserve a lot of credit for the lyrics of this album and kind of adding to that timeless feel of it. Which, it's just sad thinking about that. You kind of have these, it kind of feels like the feud that'll never end. And I'm like, I think Dave's been kind of trying to be like, kind of play, well, they never say never. I kind of wish at times he'd pulled, for those of you who know NFL football, know the Pittsburgh Steelers coach, Mike Tomlin, had a great thing when it's like, well, you're being said in reports you might take a job at a college somewhere, and he's like, never say never, but never. And I kind of wish at times Dave Gilmour would have taken that approach when discussing reunions with Roger Waters and saying, never say never, but for the most part, never. Can't work with the guy. And I think there is a lot of that. I think Animals, that whole remaster of it through the year, like, oh god, what was that, 2018? Didn't come out until last year because there's a huge holdup. I think it proved that these guys just cannot work together. And it's interesting. It really is. But anyway, talking about Dark Side of the Moon, it's a fantastic record. One of the highest selling rock albums of all time. That isn't greatest hits or compilation or something. Just fantastic. 743 weeks on the album charts. Its first initial run from 73 to 87. Like, that's a record that, let's face it, will never be broken. Back when album sales, I think, actually mattered. Like, to think an album is so iconic that it's pretty much been... I wonder if they had their own vinyl shops just pumping out Dark Side of the Moon all the time. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the album. I have to say, one of those absolutely great albums. Tell me, what do you think of this album? What are your memories of it? Anyway, once again, I have to say thank you guys so much for watching. Been listening to this album a lot today. Just amazing. This is Amir signing out. Peace.